That's how long Georgia farmers have been waiting to help to arrive from the federal government after Hurricane Michael. Their farms absolutely devastated by the storm, which destroyed billions of dollars worth of crops. Farmers had hoped that help would arrive fast. That hasn't been the case. Instead, a relief package has gotten lost in the political bickering in Congress. Now Governor Kemp is calling on lawmakers to take action. 11 Alive's Doug Richards spoke to the governor at the state capitol.
Well, Jeff, Governor Kemp, along with Agriculture Commissioner Gary Black, pointedly did not point fingers at Republicans or Democrats, although certainly there's plenty of finger pointing going on in Washington between the two parties. When we saw Governor Kemp today, along with the Agriculture Commissioner, instead they were talking about what Kemp called vindictive politicians who were refusing to compromise, resulting in this impasse. South Georgia is trying to recover from billions of dollars worth of losses from the hurricane, which showed up last fall, right at harvest time for some crops like pecans. Now those farmers who lost that income are struggling now to find money to clean up and struggling to find money to pay for new seed and replacement equipment. In many cases, the very existence of their businesses is threatened, in large part, Kemp says, because of congressional bickering.
It's really hard to fathom why there's not bipartisan support for this when you look at the states that would benefit and that need this disaster relief funding, because there's Democratic representation that's gotten just as hard hit as Republicans are.
State officials say that they have looked in state coffers for ways to provide further financing to the disaster-ridden areas of South Georgia, but have nowhere near the $3 billion or so that those folks are kind of hoping the federal government will cough up sooner rather than later. We talked with a pecan farmer in Seminole County earlier today about these crops that he is unable to plant this year and the absence of one dime of federal money, and we will hear from him tonight on 11 Alive News at 6.
Really unfair what those farmers have had to go through over the last 6 months. Doug, thank you.